Welcome to Nike Pod Sessions. I'm your host, James Buford. Join us as we talk with Nike creatives about why they did it, what they did, and what inspires them to keep doing it here on Nike Pod Sessions. Today's guest is Jessica Thornton, designer 2 for PTL Chassis.
Gosh, introduce myself. I've never been interviewed before, so this is new for me. I guess I'll start a little bit with my background in design. Actually, maybe I'll start with my background as a person. So I grew up in Arizona, definitely in a desert area. As a kid, I was in Tucson, which is like where the saguaro cactuses are from. Then as a teenager, my parents moved down to a town called Sierra Vista, which is pretty close to Tombstone. So if you've ever heard of like the OK Corral gunfight, like that's pretty much where we lived. So growing up as a kid, it was a pretty remote area that we ended up moving to. And I remember I hated it at the time. I felt so trapped, and I was like, I gotta get out of here the first thing I can. So when I went to college, the goal was literally to get as far away from home as possible. So fast forwarding to college age, Jessica moved across the country to Savannah, Georgia to attend SCAD, or the Savannah College of Art and Design.
Nice.
At the time, I was super into comic books. I always kind of have been, particularly like Japanese comic books. I was a huge manga fan. And although I don't read as much now as I used to, that was totally what I thought I wanted to be my career. So I chose SCAD because they had a great sequential art program, which is basically comic book making.
Yeah.
And I was dead set, like that was going to be my life. I was going to be an illustrator for comic books, and I was so stoked. When I got into college, I realized that I was in a class with a bunch of people who were way better illustrators than me, and I got terrified. So my first year, I switched my major into apparel design. And the reason why I did that was because I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to make it in the real world as an illustrator. What can I do that actually makes money? And I was like, well, I can sew, so maybe I'll try that. So
still some illustration in there.
Absolutely. That was actually really helpful because honestly, like those were the classes that I did better in the very beginning than my sewing classes.
Yeah. So you switched your major, and then like, were you in it, or were you like, because there's that first year that's kind of foundation, and a lot of schools do like, kind of figuring out what you want to do, and then you declare your major. Were you far into it, or?
No, thankfully. I kind of hit the panic button before I got very far into my major classes. I had taken a couple, and although I really enjoyed them and I thought they were awesome, it was honestly like my decision was fear driven. So before I spent too much money on classes that I wasn't confident that I would really use in my future life, I kind of put my jetpack on and got out of there.
I mean, even though, a lot of times you're young and those decisions are fear driven, sometimes that instinct is the right way, sometimes that opens the door to the portal, of your life. And it's like, you look back later and you're like, man, like I had like a second to make that decision, but I'm glad I made the right one. So I was in fashion and saw a lot of people fall through the cracks and, not understand where they wanted to land. And it was like, you're in there with them. So you're struggling and you're seeing them struggle. So I think just you realizing that is like, it kind of just shows like you were seasoned already. Like you were already, you might not, like looking back, you might be like, what was I doing? But you were already there. You knew you had to make that shift. And so that's really cool.
I think I gave my parents a heart attack. I actually found out this year. So I turned 30 this year, and this is the year that my mom chose to tell me that she was terrified of my career choice from the beginning. And when I was a teenager. She was so supportive. She was like, you got to do you. You want to be an artist? Go for it. And I was like, hell yeah, I've got the coolest mom in the world. She totally backs me up. Find out later this year, literally, that she was like, oh my God, I'm so glad you made it. I was so worried. Like, I was terrified that you were going to like be a starving artist. And I was like, oh, okay, well, glad to know that you were as afraid as I was in
No,
that
I think
time.
my mom hasn't admitted it yet, but I'm feeling the same way. Like
Yeah.
I'm waiting for that conversation too, where I don't think she saw fashion for me either. So
Yeah.
I agree with you in that sense. Yeah,
Definitely. Well, I'm really glad that I did make that decision because honestly, like getting into learning more about fashion, I felt like a total outsider in the beginning because I still kind of think of myself as a big nerd and I didn't really fit in with a lot of my peers. But in a lot of ways, I am very grateful for that experience because it allowed me to look at things maybe differently than others might have. And I kind of felt like, although I might classify some of those initial years in my degree as a bit of a struggle to kind of find my footing. I think that those experiences were super valuable. And one thing that I was really clear on the whole time was that when it came to building clothes specifically, I cared about serving a need and building stuff that was functional. And I think a lot of my peers at the time were thinking about the runway or thinking about like collections that inspired them visually and like their personal taste. But
Mhm.
for me, I think a lot of the criticism that I got from my professors was that I kind of threw aesthetics out the window a lot of times and was asking the questions about like, why is this pocket built this way? Why is this thing like this way? And I was always trying to find like solutions for problems that I perceived there to be. Like I remember my senior thesis was at a time where I was getting really into learning about the sport of cycling and like researching Rafa. And I really wanted to build a collection of like outerwear garments for people whose bodies were in motion. And it led to some really weird shapes and definitely like strange things. But in my senior collection review, I remember like we had a panel of jurors. There was like jurors from the more sportswear side of the industry, and then jurors from more of like the high fashion side of the industry. And I recall having such a mixed review because the people who are more on the fashion side of the industry were like, I don't know what this is. What am I looking at? But like the people who were like from the Gap were like, oh, great. We understand why you're building this.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think walking out of that program, I learned a lot of lessons about like who I was as a designer and found that I really, really loved building things for a reason and really digging into those like whys and asking questions and finding your consumer and like really addressing them. So
yeah.
um, it was I guess I never really thought about that much until now, but I think that was kind of the start of um, learning that I wanted to work on product that served athletes.
Yeah.
Um,
Was it sport specific? Because sometimes people like the way you described the functionality aspect made me think of one of my classmates who I had, and she was actually a dual major, and
mhm,
she majored in industrial design and fashion. I
mhm,
don't know how she did it, but like she was literally nonstop like working pattern drafting and like constructing like 3D models upstairs. Like it was just
mhm.
like madness with her. Do you think that you could have gone into like more like, you know, extreme sport stuff like motorcycles, or was it very much like traditional sport? You know, I'm asking like what that spectrum of functionality, how wide was it for you?
Yeah, at the time, I was just dipping my toe into that water. The things that I knew that I liked were building product with a function, but I hadn't yet put together the dots between like I remember athleisure being a buzzword at that time. So that was like 2013. And I
Yeah.
think that we as an industry were sort of just kind of talking about athleisure and it was kind of making its way into schools as a focus. So for me, like I wasn't particularly sports specific. I mentioned that I was learning about the sport of cycling, but that was kind of as far as I had gotten. I hadn't yet connected the dots into like the more performance realms and other spaces. Like I wasn't really thinking about like um like our PTL sports, for example. But my stepdad is really, really into motocross and like motorbike sports. So I think that's sort of kind of what took me down that lane, was just a little bit of that familiarity. But I didn't get into like the like dirt bike or like super bikes or
like
anything like that.
BMX or yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you cycle or do you
Nope.
ride? No.
I'm like maybe the least athletic person I know.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up playing sports. I don't really know much about them in general. That was like my, I guess, like I said, kind of dipping my toe into the water of like, oh, these people have a need. What if I
Yeah.
served that need?
I think there's something. So I'm totally not athletic either, and I think that there's something about not knowing and being in that space of like you're a curious designer and you want to
Mm-hmm.
know how things function, but you're coming from a place of like I'm not an expertise and I don't do this on the daily, but you absorb everything about it, and
Mm-hmm.
I think as a fashion designer, you have to be kind of almost obsessive compulsive in terms of how you take on new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the way that you're describing it, like a lot of designers have that feeling,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like I always wonder, like as at being at Nike, how do they expect us to know so much about sport if we've been designing our whole lives, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, like a lot of us are like, I don't play sports. I was always the kid who didn't play sports. I was drawing, I
Mm-hmm.
was taking art classes, I was, doing things that were creative, and that's why I'm able to, sew and design. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel that struggle of like two worlds, like the sport world, like the actual sport world, and then the kind of creative mind? Do you feel that struggle sometimes?
Yes, with a caveat. I like solving problems. So for me, creativity is all about that. If somebody has an issue, I love to try and help fix it. So for me, learning about sport was all about helping people fix issues and building better product that could help fix issues. I think that from a self-confidence perspective, when I first got hired into Nike, I've been my entire time so far up until our new PTL organization was in basketball. And that was right when we acquired the NBA contract. So I was hired in 2015. We got the contract for launch season 2017, but I was one of the first apparel design hires that had like NBA attached to my name. And when I was going through the interview process, I remember being legitimately, again, kind of like terrified that I was unqualified for this position because I didn't know anything about basketball. And I remember in my interview telling the person who was hiring me and then later became my boss that I didn't know anything about basketball and that I really hoped that that was okay. So I think that, yeah, from a self-confidence perspective, there definitely is that push and pull for me, always questioning like, am I too much of an outsider in this space? Am I able to have like meaningful conversations and contribute, knowing that I don't come from this area? But I think over time and over the years, kind of designing for sport, I've learned to trust myself more and to realize that, as you said, maybe sometimes coming from ignorance isn't a bad thing because it allows you to ask questions that people who are more familiar with it might not ask.
Totally. Yeah. I think the way you said that is amazing. Like that's kind of been the story of my whole like life. It's kind of like, just working on different collections and like different brands, like
Mm-hmm.
you might go to school for design and like you have design and that mindset, but then you're catapulted into like, denim or sportswear or
Mm-hmm.
outerwear. Like outerwear is a whole nother like the
Mm-hmm.
Patagonias, and like that's a whole nother world of design, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes a different mind to like really get into that. Do you feel like in designing for these different events, or actually was Nike your first position out of school, or did you have some prior experience?
Yeah, so good question. So after college, I was jobless for like a year. It was impossible at the time to find a job in the industry for me. I think a lot of people from my graduating class kind of experienced that as well. Those of us who hadn't already had a relationship built from an internship prior kind of struggled to find a job. But I will say that that year of joblessness, so like after graduating, I moved up with some of my friends who worked in the film industry to Atlanta. And in Atlanta, that year, despite being stressful because of a very reduced income and bouncing back and forth between odd jobs, was actually really fun because I got to go with my friends who worked in film to their projects on set. And although I was sort of literally in a space where I would just kind of take anything, like I didn't know what to do, but I could do grunt work. Like I can lift like equipment, I can move things. If you want like somebody to help build a set or decorate something, like that's fine with me. I think one of my favorite projects at the time actually was working for Adult Swim on their show called Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. I was only on there for like a couple days, but in those couple days, I got to help build like the character. So because it's an office comedy set in hell, like Satan is a big character in there. So I got to help build his office, which was awesome. I got to like help upholster a whole back wall to look like as if it was like tufted human skin. Like that was gross, but like super, super fun. We got to like make a shitty Vegas hotel room, which was basically like building this room and then destroying it, which was awesome. And I think those experiences kind of helped me float and be okay because they were fun, and even though they didn't pay a lot, at least it was like creative work.
Yeah.
um
And you're
After
you're
that,
you're you're networking, like you're meeting people, and you're just like you're kind of
mhm,
just putting your skills to work.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
And it was really a blast. And I think everybody, on at least what I learned from working on film sets, was that everybody puts literally like 300% of their effort into it. And although the days are crazy long, like you all feel like you're in it together, so it's not so bad.
Yeah. And
um
you get to see it come to life, and like you see, people who watch the show, or like, you can say like, oh, I worked on that set, and I
mhm,
was there. So I mean, it has a similar feel to fashion, right? Like you
mhm.
work, night and day up to this event, and then it launches, and then you're like, okay, now you get to wait and see people's reaction, you know?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, During that year, I was like still firing off job applications to pretty much everywhere that I could think about that I thought was a company that built product to serve people. So I ended up sending off applications to Nike, to like Patagonia, Columbia, Burton, North Face. Like I kind of centered more in that technical
Yeah.
outerwear space or like sports specific space. But kind of right towards the end of that year, Reebok actually had an apprenticeship opening. And they, in the same way that we do at Nike, they have a program, but theirs lasts for a year. And it's kind of like an on the job training with intent to hire at the end if their space is available. So one of my friends who had secured a job there before me recommended me for that program. And I felt so lucky because literally all of my applications had been ignored. I hadn't had a single interview and I was kind of getting desperate. So that was like my golden rope. And so I moved out of Atlanta up to Boston for that program. And I spent a little over a year working at Reebok. The team that I was working on at the time was their like training products, so more like studio training, like athletics, like in the gym, like lifting weights and like doing yoga, that kind of stuff.
What year was this?
Gosh, okay, so that would have been 2014. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
2014.
Yeah. I
Like
worked at
just,
Reebok.
oh really?
Yeah. 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 We'll go back to that. But yeah, I worked
What?
there for 4 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So I
So
worked on one series training.
we probably know, Andy Archer.
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
so I actually left in 2012.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of like anyone. So Iris was there. She was
Yes, okay.
an apparel design.
Yep,
Like
on
I know a
Outerwear.
few people who stayed.
Hmm.
Andy Archer. Trying to think of.
Do you remember Diane Mohammed?
Yep, Diana
So
Mohammed.
she was my boss.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yep, I worked with all of that whole team for.
that's awesome. I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Um,
but so yeah, you were in the inter and so actually, who was your friend who recommended you? Because I might know them as well.
Her name was Danielle Elsener. Um, she usually has like bleach blonde hair. She worked on the classics team, or not classics, sorry. She worked on, oh my gosh, I can't remember the team that's like the core product that is also training product. It's not one series, but
Oh,
it's the adjacent line that's like lower price point. Um, she worked on that while she was at Reebok.
okay. Yeah, maybe still after me.
She, yeah, so she
Yeah.
would have been there like at the end of 2013 up till 2014. Like such a small world, honestly.
So what was that experience like?
I really appreciated it as like my first like real industry job out of school.
Yeah,
I feel like I learned a lot, um, but it wasn't where I wanted to live or really wanted to be. I think also I kind of struggled to feel like I fit in. I always
yeah,
felt kind of like the weird one out, and then culturally that just didn't, that wasn't what I was like looking for in an experience. So at the end of my apprenticeship, I was, they were really awesome and they extended me for a few months, which kind of gave me the ability to float and look for other jobs. And I was really transparent that I didn't think that I would want to stay on, but
hmm,
that I think was kind of, I don't know, I feel like my whole career is just like stumbling through things to get to the eventual goal. But basically,
yeah,
like towards the end, one of the applications that I had sent to Nike finally got a call back. And that was when I started the interview process to come out to here. And it was honestly like, again, sort of miraculous timing, like right about when I was ready to transfer over to something different. That opportunity came along. And it was great because so I mentioned I'm from Arizona and I'd been living pretty far away from my family for a while. And as a teenager, all I wanted to do was get away. But then as I spent time away, I realized that I'd actually maybe like to be a little closer. So
yeah, yeah,
being in Oregon sounded a lot better than being in Boston. And
yeah.
I came out to Nike and interviewed for a couple of different teams, landed in basketball, and here we are.
Yeah. So are you, when you say be closer, were you homesick? Like, did you feel, because I mean, I'm from Boston, so I always want to go back and then I go back and then I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go. But like,
Yeah.
I do like the close proximity or the option.
Mhm.
Was it that, or was it like, I miss like Arizona?
It was more just that like I missed my family and flying back and forth across the country wasn't always like, I don't know, I guess my whole family and I are all really practically minded. So when we're looking at plane tickets, we're like, meh, I guess we can not see each other for another year, save a little bit of money.
Yeah.
So, but I think after enough of those sorts of conversations, we were like missing each other more. So
Yeah, it's
just,
tough.
yeah. I still feel kind of trapped when I go home, like, because it's still really rural. And I kind of remember feeling like stuck as a teenager. So sometimes when I go home, I have a limit of about maybe a week before I'm like, get me out of here.
Is it,
But it's
do you
nice to
need a
have the
car?
option.
Do you have to have a car in Arizona? I mean, because when I
Yeah.
think of Arizona, like I've never been, but like when I think of it, I just think of like large open land and just like long drives.
It totally depends on where you live. So in Phoenix, it's definitely like urban sprawl. I always feel like when I fly into Phoenix, it looks like Mars, and then there's like a giant city like plopped in the middle of Mars terrain. But where my parents live, they actually are now about like 3 miles from the border to Mexico. So before our previous administration decided to build a wall on the border, there was already a wall in the space that my parents live. So they're so close, you can actually see the lights on top of that wall at night. And
Wow.
you're right that you definitely need a car to get around. The drive, so usually Most of the time I fly into Tucson, and then the drive to get down to my parents' house is a little over 2 hours from Tucson.
Hmm.
So it's always like a big trip, like flying
Yeah,
and then driving for a long time. But they live in a pretty remote area. It's kind
yeah.
of like if you imagine like Colorado high desert grasslands with like rolling plains of like golden grass, like that's what it looks like.
Like even in this whole like work from home, I'm like, I wish I had a nicer view, like, or
Mm-hmm.
just like a better surrounding, like, um, just to kind of like stare out the window. But you lived there your entire life, right? Like you were,
Up until college, yep.
yeah. So, like as a kid, what was that like? Just being there and just out in, it's not desert. I mean, you said rolling like green hills, so it's
Golden grass mostly. So it's like
golden
imagine
grass.
if the grass was like knee high and it got really dry and crunchy. And for like
Uh,
90% of the year, it looks like kind of almost like, I don't know, wheat stalks that are like
yeah,
golden and dry and crunchy. And
yeah.
then for the small period of time in the late summer where it rains in Arizona, everything gets green for like a month. And then it goes
Wow.
back to being dry and brown.
That's really crazy. I mean, I'm from Boston, so I grew up with snow and slush and rain and
Mm-hmm.
very cold weather. So just even hearing that is just like, what was what was it like playing outside, or like just like what did you do to pass time and with that climate?
Well, part of the reason why I'm not very athletic is because I hated summers in Arizona. Summer was like my least favorite season. And some people are really, really well heat adapted. I am not.
Yeah,
I never have been. Even though I spent a lot of time living there, I never really got a hang of the heat. And most of the time in the summers, especially because my parents live in such a remote location, like all my friends were like a car drive away. So like I'd have to always rely on my parents to take me somewhere if I wanted to go. And then so when I was a teenager and I finally got my own license and could drive myself around, like that was huge. I finally was like, oh my God, freedom. But like most of the time, honestly, like if I was playing outside as a kid, I was like collecting rocks or like kicking tumbleweeds. And I'm not even joking, like tumbleweeds are a legitimate thing there.
yeah,
And they, when they break off from their little bases and start to roll, because there's relatively high winds in the area, they will stack up on people's fences like taller than like 6 feet. Like you'll
wow.
literally end up with these like massive tumbleweed walls.
That's
Um,
really cool. That sounds like, see, that's kind of like how I was thinking about it from my point.
yeah.
I was like, I just think of like westerns and like film, like just movies
Mhm.
about like the the desert, and yeah. So I mean,
It
that's cool.
it does really feel, from my perspective, a lot like that sort of stereotypical desert, especially because we were so, I think I mentioned, but like we're really close to Tombstone, and that city really does have that like super old town westerny feel. So like the whole like
Yeah,
saloons and like copper mining, like that's a thing.
yeah.
People come through as tourists to like go see those areas. But as a kid, I was bored out of my mind like all the
I'm
time.
sure.
So I played a lot of video games. I spent a lot of time on the internet.
Yeah.
um,
So
yeah, and
imagination must be like, because I mean, you talk about like comic books and like,
mhm,
reading that and then being online, and like you're almost you're looking outside of where
mhm,
you're at to kind of bring that creativity to yourself, or just like that kind of just inspire you on the day to day, like you're looking outside yourself.
yeah,
Whereas like,
absolutely.
I mean, for me, it was like I could just like stare out the window and in the city of Boston and just like see a bunch of stuff. So for me, it was like, still spending time indoors and being bored, but it was more of like
Mhm.
I could just look out the window and it was like something was going on. One thing I would wonder about that is like, what was that transition like from Arizona to Savannah or Atlanta? Like just, time wise, how did that feel?
I think it would have been a lot more jarring if I had landed in a bigger city. Savannah's kind of like small, even though, well, I would say that SCAD is such a huge portion of like their historic area that it really does feel like a whole town sort of built around the college. And then once you sort of getting into the outlying areas, it's smaller feeling, kind of more rural feeling. But I think that had I gone to like a major city like New York or something, I probably would have been just totally in culture shock.
Yeah.
So I think that experience sort of eased me in. I will say that it was absolutely like mind-blowingly awesome to me at the time to finally get out of a really rural area and then be in a space where I could actually like bike to a store if I wanted to, or I could like there in Savannah, Georgia, the beach isn't too far away. So just being able to go to the beach for like the first times in my entire life, I was just over the moon excited. And then as I've lived in larger and larger cities, that excitement has prevailed largely. Like I remember one of my favorite things, I have two favorite Boston things, maybe three. But one of them was the fact that their train line is, despite the fact that it's slow sometimes and not always on time, I just was like, hell yeah, I can hop on a train and go places. Finally, civilization.
Yeah. You can get around pretty easily.
Yeah. So that was huge. Like I really, really loved that.
Where did you live in Boston?
So I lived between Brookline and Newton. I did not expect to live there. Most of the people who were also apprentices with me lived in Quincy.
Wow, that's far, right? Yeah, I think that's like a ways out.
Yeah, but Quincy was like kind of where we could generally afford to live on our apprentice salaries.
Yeah.
So the only reason why I lucked out was because I happened to live in somebody's basement. My landlord like had a little townhome kind of right on the edge of Newton and Brookline, and they had finished their basement with the intent that their adult children would like come and visit and stay there sometimes, but then they decided they wanted to rent it out for kind of more like side income. And I happened to catch them like right at that time and was like one of their first tenants, and they were just super chill people, so they weren't asking like the crazy prices of other nearby areas. So I was like, hell yeah, I lucked out. And it was really close to the Green Line, so I could just hop on and go places.
The Green Line, anywhere, the two lines like are the green and the red. Like if you can be close to the green or the red, like you can kind of feel like you're in civilization. If you're maybe the orange, but it's like depends on where on the orange. And then you said there was a second thing. So
yeah, I think maybe there was three favorite things that like really stand out to me. The second was the time that I spent in the Arnold Arboretum. Like that was my place to kind of get away from the city if I needed it. Like I loved that place and I would go all the time. And if I was really determined, I could actually walk there from where I lived. It was better if I biked, or faster. But I loved those trees. And it was the first like big park that I had ever been to in my whole life. And just the fact that it was a whole dedicated nature space, like in a city as big as Boston, where you could literally like forget that Boston was there when you're kind of in the middle of that space, was just fascinating to me. And I have spent so many hours like reading all the little plaquettes that describe the trees and like where they came from and why they're in these areas and like what testing they're doing on them. So that was favorite thing number 2.
The Reebok campus, it's near there, right? Is it?
They moved into Boston proper. I'm not sure exactly where they are now.
Not anymore. You weren't in Canton.
No, I was in Canton.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I left right before they moved to actual Boston.
Yeah. Okay. And then number 3. You said
I think number 3 was this hot pot place that I used to go to. And I don't know, like it's silly because it's food related and it maybe doesn't really have much to do with Boston itself, but there was this one hot pot place that a lot of us apprentices would frequent regularly. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but
was it in Alston?
It was in like the kind of
Alston.
Chinatown area.
Oh, I know a bunch of little hot pot spots. Is there like a upstairs and a downstairs in there? Like,
I don't think so. In this one, I
no.
think it was only a downstairs, but it was kind of like in an alley, and it was right across from a bar that had like a bunch of fusion kind of like Asian inspired drinks.
Yeah.
I remember, gosh, I really wish I could remember the name of these places.
It
At
wasn't
the bar
shabu?
right across the,
Was it shabu shabu?
I don't think so. Let me see
No.
if I can find it.
Yeah, there's shabu shabu, which is like I think I used to go there a lot. That's not the only one I can think of. Um, but Boston has like, I mean, Chinatown in Boston is like, I would say that it's one of the best Chinatowns, like in my opinion, because like when you go to Chinatown in Boston, you really feel like you're in like China. Like the way
Yeah.
that the streets are very narrow, the way that the shops are set up, they're like, 10 shops just stacked on top of each other.
Mhm.
It's like you're in this whole other world. There's little bakeries and little like, it's just so much to see in Chinatown. And for
Yeah.
me, like growing up, actually, when we talk about imagination, like
Mhm.
Chinatown for me was one of the places I went to like escape Boston as a young kid. Like I would
Mhm.
just go downtown and get off on like Boylston and then just like
Mhm.
walk to Chinatown and then just like go into, because the food for me, like, I'm a black kid from Dorchester, never had Chinese food, never had Thai food, never had, like, there's like all this stuff for me. So
Mhm.
for me it was like Chinatown was like getting away from all of that, the normal stuff, the normalcy for me, and then just like
Yeah.
being something new. So
Yeah, I can totally see that. I think like as I graduated to slightly larger and larger cities, like when I got to Boston, it was one of the first places where I was exposed to some of like those other, like a much more authentic version of other cultures. Because where I came from, everything, like the closest other culture to me was like literally directly Mexico, like 3 miles from my parents' house. So there, like I became kind of familiar with that landscape, but I had so like, I mean, honestly, Chinese food in the area that I grew up in was so Americanized and like not at all like real Chinese food
yeah,
in any sense of the word. And
yeah, it's like the
I felt,
stereotypical like chicken fingers, whatever that, like, it's like,
yeah,
what are chicken
exactly,
fingers? Like, no, that's not. Yeah, yeah,
for sure. And like, I think that like getting to live in like bigger cities, it was just, I don't know, if you imagine me with literally like stars in my eyes and like just totally in shock and awe and like so excited about all of it, like that really was my experience a lot of the time because I'd never lived in or like seen these kinds of places, and it was huge. Like I feel like it was exactly what I wanted, like growing up, like to get out to somewhere where
yeah,
people were like not like what I was used to, and like where there was all kinds of different stuff that I could learn about and
yeah.
like meet different people. It was awesome.
Just yeah, I mean, even just hearing you talk about it makes me kind of miss like the just Boston as a city. Talk a little bit about like Mexico, like your relationship with Mexico being right there, and like were there things that either food or inspiration growing up, or things that you look back and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I was influenced by that. Like, how did Mexico play a part in your life?
I think I'm really familiar mostly with like cowboy culture,
Mm,
from both like the American version as well as like the Mexican version, because that was super, super like prevalent in the area that I grew up in. But I will also say that I am maybe annoyingly particular about my Mexican food. Like,
yeah.
uh, I don't usually eat Mexican food outside of the Southwest because I'm so picky that I annoy people who I go to restaurants with, and I try to avoid like being a burden by being a jerk about my preferences.
Yeah. So, like,
So,
what are you looking for? Like, this is interesting. Like, maybe I don't know. Maybe there's some stuff I don't know about Mexican. Like, or what are the things you look for?
so this is gonna sound like really weird nuances, but basically the kind of Mexican food that was most common in the area that I grew up in was like the sort of bland family style food, but it wasn't, the spices themselves weren't bland. And although like it's basically Sonoran style Mexican food, and although it might be more simple, it isn't like, it doesn't taste simple, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think that a lot of times when I'm eating Mexican food in not the Southwest, I find that like, although the plates look similar, they just don't taste the same.
Yeah.
There wasn't as much like maybe like fancy fusion restaurants had more of like the Baja California style Mexican blend, but the really like culturally in the area that I grew up in, because there was a lot of crossover like back and forth across the border in that area, like it was like family style food, like simple, fresh, but not like overly complex. And that I think is what I miss most.
I think the one thing you're hitting on, and like when I go to, I went to Mexico for the first time. Now I think it's been 2 years now, but that was one thing that I realized is like some of the best food was like your everyday spots versus the, you know, going to a place that like websites would tell you. Like I would at first I would like go on Yelp and like find places, and then eventually I was just like, I'm just gonna, we like one time we asked our Uber driver, where should we eat? Like, and he just gave us a spot, and we just like kept doing that. Like we would go to a store and then they'd be like, oh, just, you know, grab a tacos from down the street. Like it was, and that was the best food versus like us kind of mapping out our day and like trying to find all these like good food spots. So I think, and then also volume, right? Like when you look at, so is it Sonora food? Like, you're trying to feed a lot of people. I think oftentimes like little shops or stores, or they're trying to feed so many people that it's got to be like simple but like amazing and filling. So I feel like there's something to that. Like it's not everything on the plate, it's more of like just what you need on the plate, you
For
know?
sure.
And there's something homey, there's something like your mom's food is like that. Like it's like, oh, she's gonna make it like it's gonna fill me up, but it's not like Thanksgiving, you know, like
no, you got it exactly right. That's I think, and maybe it's that sort of like family feeling that is so nostalgic for me. But honestly, some of the best meals that I've had have been cooked at people's homes, and it's like it isn't a lot, but it's just amazingly delicious, you know. And it can literally just be like beans and rice and some kind of meat, but like that's all that's needed.
And there's always like someone else's rice is always different. Like it's like, and you're always like, what do you do with it? And they're like, oh, I just like squeeze lemon, or like I use like, you know, like some kind of like spicy something in it, and you're just like, oh, okay, I never thought to like put that in there. Or I think everyone has their own way, and and you get that by eating family style. So what are your two, or if you had to name your two favorite spots in Portland for Mexican?
I don't have any.
So
there's one that I've heard about.
There's
one I've heard about that's like a burrito, like a little burrito cart on the east side. I think it's like somewhere around Milwaukee, but I don't remember the name of the cart off the top of my head. And it was recommended to me by somebody from California, so I trust their sense, I guess.
Have you
but I haven't eaten there yet.
No, not yet. Okay.
No, I'm really jaded. Like I feel like
do you do your own cooking now, or like are you making your own stuff? Like
yes, but not Mexican food, because I don't even trust myself to get it right. I guess
like, I'm not gonna try. What do you know? Are you a big cooker, or no? Are you?
I would say so. I do like cooking quite a bit. I am not, I wouldn't say I'm super good at it, but I'm really adventurous. I kind of tend to cook whatever sounds good to me, or if I like have a restaurant thing that I've tried and I'm like, man, that was good and I'm really craving that, I'll probably, instead of going back to the restaurant, try to find a way to cook it myself and fail like 20 times before I get it to something that feels similar.
I'm like that. I'm like that. Eventually I'll just like land on like a really dumbed down version that I would never share with anyone else. I'll just be like, this is, chickpea curry, but I would never make it for like anyone who I thought was going to judge me on it. I'd just be like, no, but it works for me,
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you one last question in terms of working from home and just, the chaos of Nike and the workload right now. And what is that one thing that you're either taking time out to do, or what is that one thing that maybe you've picked up that you're like, oh, I'm home all the time and I didn't have enough time before, but now I can kind of like start this project and kind of stop and pick it up. What's that one thing for you?
I think I'm actually still trying to find that one thing. So mostly, I would actually say that I had a better work-life balance before we started working from home. And one thing that I struggle with as a creative person is trying to make time to be creative outside of work. Because usually when it comes time to be done with work, I actually feel a lot of times so burnt out that like being creative in a different direction doesn't always feel good. So I'm kind of actively looking for that. But I will say that I started, this is kind of, again, back to my nerdy hobbies, but I haven't been playing recently, but I did start playing World of Warcraft again for a while. Yeah. And that was great because it was something that I could do together with friends. It was like right as the new expansion came out, and that was like definitely I could kind of turn off my brain. Yeah. And like, hang out with some people who make me feel good. And that, I think that was the closest thing that I've found so far.
Hey, that works. Like gaming is huge. Like I started playing, I'm not in World of Warcraft, but like I did start playing like video games more now, which is something that when I started doing it, I felt weird. I was like, I haven't done this in so long, like where I really just like sat and like played a game, because you're adulting and you're out here and you're just like, oh, I don't, I'm working, I'm busy, and then I've never really just like got in the zone of a video game. Or it's been like 10 years since I've really like got in the zone of a video game, so that's really cool. This was amazing. I feel like I learned a lot about you, and we'll continue to chat, and we'll catch up soon.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, keep video gaming. If video gaming is it, then if that's working, then make it work,
Yeah, it's that for now. I still want to try to get better at carving out more time. I'm not very good at that. I need to get better.
Me too. We need that like kind of self time. We got to figure it out, but we have the time now, and I think that's what's great too, is that we have that time. So
agreed. Well,
we'll talk soon, Jessica.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna have more people in common too, because I want to talk more about Boston as well.
Me too. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
This concludes episode 6. Join us next week when we talk with Scott Hudson-Tiller, Senior Designer for PTL Chassis. Thank you for listening.